Hello, everyone. I have a very special guest with me today. His name is Haoyu Zhao. He is a composer for media, and also a shakuhachi player, and maybe I can say multi instrumentalist as well. Thank you for being here, Haoyu, on this very pleasant Boston evening. I know you moved to Cambridge recently after having stayed in Boston since 2019. How are you liking uh, the new city?
Thank you for having me, Amogh. Um, yeah, Cambridge has been pretty fun. Um, I think the nightlife there is better than Boston, but I miss Back Bay that I can walk around in lights, um, very late in night. But yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, this is a slightly unique episode for me because I think you're the only guest who's been to my house so many times. And so since we're good friends, I'm also aware of what you've been up to and things like this. I know you've been working on a film scoring project recently. I would love to know more.
Yeah, so the film scoring project is for a Chinese film which will be released this year. And what do you want to know about the plot or
Your
what's a
involvement in it?
so I so I was a composer in collaboration with other two composers, and yeah, I am in charge of part of the writing and um, a large portion of the mixing, and just also like spotting and all the you know choices to make for the whole team. We discuss within the team and make decisions before we write anything. Yeah, so a bit of everything really, because it's a small team, so really you have to do everything a little bit.
Right. So I'm a bit of a stranger to the film scoring world, but do you have a set process when working on film music? I guess it might be different when you're working alone or if you're working with a team. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Let me start off by asking you: is this um, like the first time you're doing a big group project, film scoring wise, composition wise?
Yeah, so I've actually had the same um, composer in collaboration, and we did couple film scoring contests before together. So we already know each other, and we know each other personally, and we're friends personally. Um, yeah, uh, so it's not the first time I do this kind of thing with that particular group of people. Um, yeah, and the other question is to have a set of um, workflows like that. I think it depends on the project, and um, for example, if it is like a feature film, it will be sent to you very late in the process of the filmmaking. So that means you get the film after everyone has been involved, like all the shots are done and everything is more or less edited, and you will get the you know the film with like temp music, which is like a reference music they offered you, and then you make the spotting note, which is where need and what kind of music is kind of like like a physical note or like a digital note. You just write everything down that, oh, this needs that and that, you know. And then you just separate which cues to write. That means you split the entire film into like cues, which are like a short, excerpts from the film, and you use an entire track of music for that one cue, which usually is one cohesive unit of emotion or like narrative in itself. Yeah. So yeah, you just split the cues, and each person can do the cues they are like assigned. So yeah, for that group project, we are pretty democratic. But the past project I did alone, um, is similar process without the group work, which I need to figure out what to write when, and because I'm not a very organized person, as you know, so I just write music, and not in order, but whenever I feel like I have something to say about each section of the media I was working on.
Maybe one day the two of us can collaborate
Yeah.
and take over Hollywood, eh? I know growing up you played a lot of guitar and bass, and you were frequently involved with being in a band, particularly rock music. And I just found out, you just recalled to me earlier this evening that you even had a friend in LA who was a singer, and you probably could have considered, or you probably could have seen yourself pursuing that music, even here. But that's not how things happen. Anyways, my question to you is, uh, can you discuss your uh, involvement with that music growing up?
Yeah, so I was actually exposed to uh, the whole package of popular music, not only like popular music of today, but also popular music of you know all the popular music during high school.
Yeah.
So because during that time I got access to like all the online streaming platform, and I just browse through like playlists people created. So I really started with like roots music, as they called in US, the other Delta blues and stuff like that, because I was learning how to play like the blues harmonica. They call it blues harp, blues harmonica. So I was listening to a lot of old, like very old, starting out R&B, like Delta blues, Chicago blues, stuff like that, which led me into, like early rock and roll, and then, hard rock and metal. So yeah, it's pretty. Looking back, is very like interesting, because I basically, my listening experience mimics the rock history, or whatever they call it. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and after that, I was very impressed with electric guitar, because I hear all this great like blues music, and electric guitar is a huge part of it, and with basic understanding of, because I played blues harmonica, so I had like amp with overdrive, um, so I thought, wow, it's really cool if I can play guitar. And I was watching, of course, medias like anime, um, in particular that one anime K-On! Inspired me, alongside with Guns N' Roses, as inspired me to like learn electric guitar. And ever since that, I was playing guitar in high school, and um, in contact with other other kids in high school which are like who are interested in like, band music, and we just started from there, playing like simple rock music in like shopping malls and in high school, school events, and one thing led to another, and we had a full-on like hard rock band in 2021, and we had one album release, and yeah, they are like I quit the band afterwards, after you were mentioned later, I got into composition and film scoring, but the band still went a long way, and they played in Whiskey A Go Go, which is like a famous rock venue, which they even played like for a famous band, and to what's the word, heat up the the performance before they entered the
Yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah so
You open for them.
yeah, open for them, yeah.
What I find really interesting about your journey into rock music is that there was a very clear and organized progression. Like you seem to start from a historical standpoint, because I think how most people get into things like rock, or even something as vaguely cool as electric guitars, is that they see someone do it, and their first instinct is, oh wow, that's super cool, I want to do that as well. But I'm not surprised to find that you had a more introspective approach to it, more organized, more sincere. How do you think that knowledge of that music influenced you, and maybe even your approach to learning other kinds of music? Because I feel like you started with studying it first, or really listening to it first, before you just try to shred or something like that. I'm curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like it was pretty natural progression for me. I didn't think of I'm going to learn rock music and I do this and that, but I was interested in one thing, and which led to another thing, so it was like a natural process for me. Yeah, I was going to say, because earlier you said, you know, my experience was different than a lot of people, and that recalls one of my, memories of hearing the band Clash for the first time in my parents' car, and I was playing Clash London's Calling from my cell phone, and at the time, the first time I heard it, I was thinking that this is like pure noise and nonsense, because I couldn't process the singing style and the production they had in that particular song, that at the time I thought was noise. But after I got exposed to like rock music for a while, and I look back, and you know, if you know the song, London's Calling is not even that noisy. It's not even that distorted to begin with. So at that moment, I guess I realized that it's all depends on the perspective. And so back to your question, how does that, my experience from the blues harmonica to rock music, influence me now? It's hard to say, because I'm sure there's like deep connection between my exposure to rock music early on, and the music I like and write today. But at the top of my head, I can't think of anything. But yeah, definitely. I think that's a thing which inspired me to like get to know more of music production and how, you know, the contemporary pop music, how does that work? Because I was exposed to like as I told you, overdrive and effects such as, you know, guitar pedals early on, so which makes like cognitively makes me think that sounds are like manipulatable. Is that the word? So maybe that's like a more profound influence that gave me that it gave me a perspective that, you know, every sound is can be processed and can be, you know, changed in some way to fit your likeness or yeah.
I think your analogy about the song you heard in your parents' car, it reminds me of how we composers, we might listen to someone like Schoenberg for the first time and think, oh, this is so noisy, I can't really get this. But once you think of the history and uh, put the Schoenberg piece in context, maybe it sounds a little more understandable. And certainly when you listen to even more modern music, you begin to feel like your objection to Schoenberg was kind of silly to begin with. What kinds of bands did you like? I know you mentioned Guns N' Roses, and the rest I'm not familiar with, but what kinds of bands did you like?
Um, I used to like a lot of heavy metal scene, which by heavy metal I mean like um, thrash metal and like even I had a period of like intention like active listening to like grind metal and stuff like that, which is pretty like extreme end of the metal spectrum, I guess. Um, but I because of my I guess blues harmonica background, I always like old rock band like I like the Who, the band the Who, and like Beatles, Led Zeppelin, basically all the, you know, old rock bands, which I like. I also like um, well, very different from that. I like post rock in especially math rock. You know, bands like Elephant Gym, which is Taiwanese band, and you know, Toe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very different, but yeah. So very random.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I I did. I was going to ask you whether you think the dissonance you hear in a lot of heavy metal influenced your later compositional styles, but maybe I'll save that for when we get to your compositional career. Because I know when you enrolled at Berklee in 2019, you initially didn't declare composition as your major. You declared CWP, which is contemporary writing and production, as your major. And that major has to do with making music for completely commercial purposes. And I think it's fair to say that it's not so much about developing an individual voice, but it's about creating music for a product of a something very business oriented. What was your mindset as you declared CWP as your major?
Well, I came to Berkeley for doing jazz guitar actually, but it never really happened. Um, so I was doing CWP because it was an easy major to declare first of all, and then I was doing my rock band thing. So I want to have more like knowledge in like music production in general, but I don't want to get, you know, I don't want to do like EPD and which is too like or music production oriented. I still want to be helping my bandmates and making albums and all that. So that's why I did CWP. But as you know, I soon get out from that and did composition and film scoring. So yeah. So do you want the overview of CWP or
just your relationship with it?
yeah,
You learned from it as long as you were there.
I actually learned quite a bit from it because it has like specific writing classes for you, such as groove writing and vocal writing, which is helpful because, for example, in groove writing, they introduce you to different kind of grooves, groove writing, such as grooves from South America, samba, bossa nova, patito aldo, very very like not very like in detail of course, but even like I had 1 week we had a class on like how to make music which sounds like Motown, stuff like that. It was helpful for me to get access and to know all this style of music, and also like get at least try to like mimic the sound of this kind of music, and also even before I entered composition major in like vocal writing class, the final project requires you to write an a cappella. So yeah, I was inventing my own counterpoint rules back then, and trying to modulate from one place to another, like of course thinking in like jazz harmony, and which I succeed in modulating modally from one place to another. So yeah, so the CWP is really helpful for me to like know more music styles and genres, and also it helps me to like it's very general knowledge, but helps me to know music production, mixing, and basic knowledge of synthesizers and all the mixing stuff, EQ, compression. Yeah.
And what about film scoring? How did that happen?
So the film scoring, I was talked into by my parents because they want me to have something, sustainable for myself, which I'm not completely against, but actually before I entered film scoring major, I already did some film scoring project with my friends in Emerson College. So is that the name of the school, Emerson College?
I just know it as Emerson.
Yeah, Emerson something. Emerson College, I think. So I already did a couple of the student film project in Emerson. Yeah, so I was not against it, film scoring, but I was not particularly like aspired to be a film scorer like many of my fellow students in film scoring major, as you know.
And how deep was the impact of film scoring, of your film scoring education on your compositional style?
I don't think film scoring have spent a lot of time teaching us how to compose actually. film scoring curriculum is so the two main thing we do. The course name is like dramatic scoring and scoring tech. So obviously scoring tech we will learn about the technology aspect of film scoring. And dramatic scoring is more about how your music is, in relation to the film you're working on. So how does your music work on the film? So it never really taught us how to compose in a way. I mean, we do have orchestration class and writing class, but there's not enough emphasis on actually how to compose in that curriculum. So that's why, like, in older days, I heard from graduates that film scoring major is often like bundled with composition major, because film scoring major is not a major for you to learn how to compose. It's a major for you to learn how to compose for film. So
And how did you get interested in declaring the composition major? Because that's a very separate kind of skill and even culture within, let's say, a place like Berkeley. How did you get interested in it?
yeah, I always have the. I guess I started playing music very young, but I never get really serious. I started to play accordion when I was 4, and after I moved to a new city in middle school, there's not a good accordion professor in the city, so I just switched to piano because it's similar keyboard instrument. Um, I mean, I always have a kind of I always admire classical music in an extent that is kind of athletic, and I admire that people dedicate their lives doing it. But I was not exposed to it that much before Berklee, so my composition major is more. I guess after I get into all the writing classes in Berklee, all the core music class like counterpoint and tonal harmony, and I was exposed to, you know, professors introducing different kind of music to us, and hearing music playing live in like Berklee and also in like Boston. So it's like a gradual process for me to like get into classical music. I guess like contemporary composing in that sense. Yeah, but it's hard to say. I could have like carried on as a rock guitarist, bassist, if my old bandmates came to Berklee with me. So yeah, that's another potential for me, I guess, back then.
What do you think attracted you to the composition thing? Was it just your circumstances of not having your friends around? And, as you would probably agree, I think composition can be either a very solitary pursuit or something that really thrives off of your own independence and your own personal vision. So I'm curious what attracted you to composition.
I mean, I was not. Well, I was thinking about, as you said, a lot of people when they first heard atonal music, like Schoenberg and others, I was trying to like think of my first experience in Berklee with atonal music, and I was not very reluctant to like it because it was not that dissonant to me anyways, because I was listening to a lot of um, heavy metal stuff before, extreme noisy music. So the first time I heard atonal music, it really doesn't mentally process differently compared to like tonal music for me, at least. I know that's not the case for a lot of people because people here tends to be exposed to classical music. By people here, I mean people in the States are like exposed to classical music early on when they are young. Like they probably heard of Nutcracker when they are like kids. I mean, I've heard of Nutcrackers when I was kids, but I never actively listened to it, and I never listened to it in its entirety.
Right.
So I know like Beethoven fifths in music class, but it doesn't cognitively make an impact to me. So as just as atonal music, so I was exposed to all the repertoire without any like previous, with very little previous like experience, which arguably makes my makes me easier to like accept the aesthetics of the contemporary classical music per se. Yeah. What's the question again?
Bro, sorry, it's like kind of late, so I forgot the question myself. No, but I know, I think it's like what attracted you to composition in the first place. Because I feel like, it's also something that's it is something that's very individualistic.
Yeah, I do like I like I guess you're right about I was indeed attracted by the individual nature of composing, but also I I think I was also attracted by the possibilities of writing cool contemporary stuffs, which I thought was cool. I still think it's cool, but people might not think so. So yeah, that's always the case.
How did some of those early courses, like courses in tonal harmony or tonal counterpoint, how did they influence your approach to composition? Did you just see them as requirements for your major and you were just waiting to get to the contemporary stuff? Or were you just. Is that when you realized that, oh, I like writing on an empty piece of paper and making up my own notes?
I would say I like to write tonal music as much as I like atonal music, but I don't. Well, let me answer the question first. Which class? So yeah, so I didn't think much when I took the course because I thought I was just learning knowledge about music. So I didn't think could I make use of this because I don't know what will I make in the future. So I just tried my best to take everything in. So yeah, but back then for a long time I didn't even know the contemporary music existence. I mean, I know briefly about atonal music, but I never really listen to it um, with my entire focus. So that's pretty late on after I already got into composition major. So it's hard to say why I got into composition major. I guess I have the, I was thinking since I I gave up on like touring with my band, and I thought that was not the lifestyle for me. So I thought maybe I'm better suited with, writing in the back.
At the desk.
Well, that's, you know, I never really write at desk anymore. I compose in sofa, you know.
Oh.
But that's another topic. Um, yeah. So, what was I trying to say?
You said good.
Yeah. Um,
Did you have any kind of an aha moment when you were beginning to get exposed to contemporary music? For me, it was actually in Yunji's contemporary techniques 2 course, because for me it's like that's when I realized, hey, you know what, you can basically make up your own method of making music, and you can approach it from a more technical or abstract or conceptual point, and the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want. So I found that very inspiring, and I sort of took that and ran with it. Would you say there was any one particular moment for you which really solidified your interest in contemporary music?
I have the moment of music enjoyment that really inspired me. In particular, um, the one of them is Takemitsu's Stanza 2 for harp and tape, and maybe like Beethoven's String Quartet in F minor, I think, something like that. So, like instance like that aroused very particular feelings for me, and makes me want to like, do stuff similar like that. But for aha moment, like you said, I I always know that I can do whatever I want, but I still like somehow like it didn't. It has something to do with, I guess, ego. A lot of time when, like early on, when I compose for occasions, I felt like I wasn't going anywhere, and I was just grinding to get the next note out to like fulfill the requirement of the particular occasion and to get the job done, rather than expressing myself. I don't know about you. Like, what's your thought on like composing to express yourself? Because my take on this is that ultimately what you write reflect yourself, but um, it's really hard for me to, you know, to intellectually think that, oh, I need to express this in music, and I write music to express that artistically. It's easy for me to do it for a media that, but it's hard for me once I thought that I write the music to express myself, then I start to overthink, and I don't know, which exactly is the thing I'm writing. So that's, I'm curious about your thought on this too.
Well, you see how you, it's not my interview, so I'm not going to give you my personal opinions. Not that I have too many, but I do have something to share. I was watching Reels one day, and there was an author. She might have been a poet or maybe a novelist, something of that nature. And she said that she didn't really believe that the purpose of art was to self express or that it had to be personal expression. She said you could express a variety of things. It could be something you see in society, or perhaps someone else's emotions or feelings, or perhaps nature, things of this kind. So I don't think it has to be self expression all the time. It can express a variety of things. I guess you, as the author of your art, you are expressing something, so it's your expression. But the expression doesn't have to be self expression. In my own personal journey, at least in my later career at Berklee, I felt like a lot of things were personally related, you know? So I can list off my repertoire and you'll remember, oh yeah, that piece was about that situation or something, But earlier on, I remember just satisfying the purpose of the music, right? Like if it's a piece for say Yunji's class, like oh yeah, the whole point of this piece is to explore spectralism, and that's really it. So I'm not thinking about expressing myself. I'm just thinking about expressing the requirements for that particular assignment. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you have a response?
Well, I get that something you write for the sake of writing it for the, you know, aesthetic or for like practical purpose. I guess my thing is that I don't really have the urge to like express anything really. So if you say like, oh, why do you write this piece? What do you want to express? I can like I can probably make up 100 stuff to say on the spot, but it's not it's not the entire of you know why I write the piece. I wrote the piece because either I need to write a piece or you know no I write a piece because I need to write a piece for whatever reason. So
So so you don't have this inner urge to make music or to make a composition. Like some people would claim that music is life. Music is what I wake up to do, and if I don't do it, then I feel like there's something wrong. But it doesn't. It's not obvious to me that it's your case.
I mean, if writing music is your job, then you know, I guess no. If writing music is my job, then all I want to do is to like have holidays and not write music. But ultimately, I don't have the urge to write music, but I feel like I have. Well, I do have the urge to write music, but it's not that I am eager to write. It's more like I feel the need to write music for whatever reason I'm not aware of. So
Can you remind me what you said before? See, now this is getting a little conversational, but I you said something in your response, and I'm trying to remember what you said. So you said,
the last response
yeah, you said you write music because,
for the purpose
For-
of writing music.
and what did you say after that? I wish I could replay this, but it's okay. But I guess there doesn't have to be a strong purpose, right? Oh, here's what I was going to say. So some people, right? So some people ask you, perhaps a composition professor might ask you, "Oh, why are you writing this piece? What are you trying to express? And you said you can just make something up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I completely agree with that because I feel like this whole relationship between making music and then ascribing meaning to it, it's very flimsy. Like you could take the same piece of music and say this is my harmony project 2.pdf or something. But you can also say, oh, this is for the suffering of so and so in this part of the world. And if you just present it that way, then it's going to have a completely different impact on your audience. And I think it's meaningful that people want to do these things and dedicate their music to these purposes. One example that for sure that comes to mind is Trinity by Penderecki, because initially it was just some piece, and then after he had finished it, after it was planned, he just dedicated it to the victims in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So it was more of an emotional gesture, more of a maybe social thing, which is valuable, but it's not obvious to me that you can just make art and say this piece represents this. And I feel like that is a sentiment that's very strong in film scoring. And it's fine, that's their world. But from a more logical standpoint, or maybe from a skeptical standpoint, I'm not convinced that there's a strong relationship. You just have to make it up and believe it, I feel. What do you think?
Well, first of all, this is getting controversial. The Serenity in today's ethics is not good. The naming of Serenity.
Oh, I don't know.
I feel like in like today's ethic, it's slightly unethical to do that if you're like. Well, but anyways, it's not our.
You can elaborate.
I think it has the. I know it's not Penderecki's intention, but it has the. You can't just take. A historical event, a massacre like that, and name it as a peace theme if you're not intended to that way. That's not like very respectful for the event, because like it or not, if you do that, your music will have commentaries on the event. And for like such a controversial topic, it can be like read in like different ways than you would want to. So like in that sense, if Penderecki wrote a piece, composed a piece in today's world, and named the piece Serenity for Hiroshima, it's slightly ethically, well.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. The relationship is very flimsy, Like,
But in terms of film scoring, I feel like it's different because your music doesn't need to express anything. It's functional in a way that your music is the film.
mhm.
Your music is not trying to express the happiness or sadness in the film. Your music is the film in a way. So like you have to view the entirety of the thing. And as you said, as flimsy, that's
Flimsy.
as it is, the labeling itself, it is part of the score's job
Mhm.
in to begin with. So yeah, that's my take on it.
I guess the kind of thing I'm thinking of is if you have some kind of holy or angelic scene, maybe a lot of film scorers' first instinct would be to play harp because of I guess it's fair to call it a trope. It's just like a trope. It's a stereotype. It's a slightly stereotypical thing to do, you know. I mean, I can think of some slightly race-oriented examples, but I don't want to do
Yeah.
that.
No, um,
But,
but
but sorry, but my thing is, it's stereotypical. It's not logical, which is fine. Like I get they have a job to do, but I don't know.
I mean, like this kind of thing is evocative because people are from the cultural background of Christianity or like, or even not even Christianity, like Greek
Yeah.
Roman, and then heritage. Say like, for example, like people in Japan, they might when they need like slightly, well, what's the word, angelic, holy
Yeah.
thing, they might play like gagaku music, like they play like, you know. So it's heavily like culturally oriented, and it's nothing to do with the music itself. And well, that's actually a good example of how sound itself is evocative, in that people relate, different um, semiotic and like symbols to it, even
Yeah.
it is not intended to or like designed to do that. Like harp and angelic sing is one example.
Like trumpets and army or something.
Yeah,
Fanfare.
fanfare. But my point of view is that sound itself can be suggestive. That saying that if you're looking at mixing or like sound designing in a perspective that every sound is just frequency, and as you know, in EPD, electronic music, every sound is you can design the sound to be whatever you want. And I feel like our biological instinct makes us think of some sounds in relation to something. That's very natural, I think.
Well, I am enjoying this, so I'm going to keep probing you on this. But I feel like all these associations we make, they are largely cultural. I don't think there's some kind of inherent property that, say, a harp or harp music has, which is representative of something holy. I think it's the fact that, let's say, people in general have grown up associating, um, say, rock music with people who are disobedient. Maybe punk is a better example, like punk and being recalcitrant. It's a fancy word, but it's just like you reject authority. You know, it's like it's not inherent in the music. Like if you just take the music and show it to an alien or something, I don't think the alien will say, "Oh yeah, this reminds me of uh, disobeying the government or something." It's just the fact that it was used and perceived and projected in that manner. You know what I mean? Like I completely agree that there's these symbols that you can associate with musical experiences, but I feel like we make them up. But I think this just depends on your worldview, you know? Like maybe back in the day, people thought Bach's music was literally something that descended from the gods or something. I'm sure many people still believe that. But to me, it's a product of, say, culture and this long history of humans doing human things. And then we have this need to make meaning out of things. And then we're exposed to figures like Bach in a certain way. And so we end up confirming some things. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I think you're still talking about the language aspect of music, but so in my point of view, I think music has both language and, you know, the sound itself is it's a physical event and it is a thing. And so music is not only a semiotic language that we create to communicate, but music itself is an event that, you know, we experience as a living thing here. So, for example, um, if say like reverb, how do we perceive reverb as space? It's not. I believe it's not. It's not how we perceive reverb as space is not cultural but instinctive. So in a way that spectral music reflect on that we can indeed artificially manipulate our sensual, you know, features to like to trick us think that, you know, the sound we hear suggests a thing that we hear by like sonically but not semiotically.
Yeah.
So I think your analogy of, you know, that is reductive in a sense that it only covers the language aspect of music.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I do agree that, let's say, things in our evolutionary history have primed us and are responsible for our various apparatus and like yeah, I totally see what you're saying. Um, in the interest of time, maybe we will have this conversation later. But I'm curious about what kind of contemporary music repertoire uh, was really inspiring you during your composition journey at Berklee.
As you probably know, I like serial music. But for some reason, maybe I don't hear serial music as they intended to be, as because I was lacking exposure to common practice music, so I probably hear serial music very differently than what Schoenberg was intended to us to hear. However, I believe that, um, uh, well, I feel like a lot of people are like me that they didn't hear serial music or they failed to hear serial music as what Schoenberg intended for them to hear. So repertoire that really influenced me is include serial music, but that doesn't mean that I'm, you know, writing music like Schoenberg, but rather than I'm inspired by serial music's, you know, exploration for like spatial, temporal, that register, music register, like instrumentation, that kind of stuff, in particular ribbon. So it's pretty like common, you know, for contemporary composers. And you know, music of Takemitsu, music of Cage, pretty common influences from, you know, the last century, and I would say actually um, music not from the concert music world, as you said, rock music, and as you said, shakuhachi music, probably, and yeah, and everything else, pop music I hear and I'm exposed to. Yeah, so it's really hard to say that which repertoire influenced me the most. I mean, I browse through score followers all the time. So like I'm influenced by everything which I'm not even like aware was the categories of how to categorize them of of like new emerged composers, composers of last century, of like last generation. Yeah, so I feel like I'm really living the like internet age that I can't really like spot my influence from one source, that I'm kind of taking a little bit from everywhere now.
I wonder how people are going to categorize all this stuff now that the closest analogy I can give you is this tree has like too many branches now, and it's very hard to see or categorize things for sure. I'm curious about if there's anything in particular that really draws you to contemporary music composition. Because what I took away from, let's say, your experience in your rock band or even your CWP courses was that you realize that it's very easy to manipulate sound and really change it drastically. So that makes me think, oh, how you had an early insight into how you can experiment with timbre in music. Um, uh, is there any one particular element or perhaps a set of elements that you're really drawn towards in music?
I feel like to be honest, I'm very, I'm not a I'm kind of a rebellious person, that I will say, you'll probably know that I will like try to argue with you whenever you state um like a thought or anything. I would try to counter argue that. So I guess it's the same in music, that I really enjoy doing music which are not conventional. Even when I first started to like learn piano in middle school, because I had terrible eyesight, I really didn't like to play piano, like sight reading and learn Chinese. So whenever I'm not supervised, I would try to like try to play tunes I know from TV and stuff, and try to make things out from it, because I really want to make this thing so I can preserve it in my mental block, that I have it now, and it's not something which you know are conventional. So I guess I'm really drawn to the fact that you can really make something in like from composing. Yeah. That's my best answer I can think of, but
So you just love the fact that it's a completely blank slate and you don't really have to conform to any particular style or technique or even respect anyone's opinion or expectations.
Well, that's not true because everyone are like, restrained by, like, every composer now is have to be aware of everything that's happening and has happened before. So that way they can like create something which are not, at least not like intentionally derivative. Um, but yeah, so I really don't know because I feel like it's hard to say what the real authenticity is, but I like the fact that you can say it's the playfulness of composing, or like the fact that um, you can have an abstract thing in your hand and you realize that you made it. That's a very happy side of composing, I think.
That's such a nice way to put it. The playfulness of composing a composition. So you mentioned being influenced by shakuhachi music. As your friend and your AI chatbot, I am very pleased to see your progress on the instrument,
Yes.
and I'm very proud of you. Uh, how did you get exposed to the shakuhachi, and what made you want to play it?
So shakuhachi. So my dad played bamboo flute very badly, but he has a collection which includes shakuhachi. So I know the existence of this instrument early on. And my first encounter of shakuhachi really is after Berklee, and I was listening to soundtracks and music of Takemitsu, of course, and also just albums and soundtrack of games and TV. At first, it was, you know, it was. I didn't treat it as a serious thing. I thought it as a hobby, and since my dad was such a bad player, so I thought I can easily outlearn him in months. So I did, and yeah, and it's shakuhachi itself was hard to get the sound, but I find it enjoyable to play. Um, I think it is true to say that because people I know who plays shakuhachi think that way. Um, it feels somewhat satisfying to play shakuhachi, even though it is not an easy instrument to, because it only plays minor pentatonics and every note you need to get have to be get by special techniques. Um, yeah, so it's like everything we covered today. I don't know how I I don't know how exactly I get into it, but I ended up doing it. Um, and yeah, I guess I tried a bunch of stuff, and I kept the thing I liked the most. So, but it's hard to say why I chose to do it in the first place. So it's kind of luck and opportunities, I guess, and also like the physical environment you're in, and my dad obviously is a factor to consider, and yeah.
How did you learn it? Because it's not a common instrument, and I think You're the only shakuhachi player I know personally.
Yeah, so I learned from a teacher online who become after like three and some years, um, we've become closer, and I've met him personally in real life many times. So I to be brief, I learned online, and um, yeah, shakuhachi is such a weird instrument. It's not um, it's like a whole culture that you're immersed to. That it can be like very mythological for people, but for me, because I have knowledge of music in the first place, so it didn't. Although I enjoy the aspect of the shakuhachi culture and mythology, um, yeah, it's more of an musical instrument for me. Um, yeah, I don't know what else to say.
I know I have a question for you. So let's try to contrast, say, learning the piano versus learning the shakuhachi. Because when you learn the piano, you probably have to learn compositions by other composers, and you have to do journey exercises, right? But when you play the shakuhachi, I'm sure you have to do certain things that are expected of any beginner instrumentalist, like practice your scales or practice breathing in this way and whatever. But did you find that the very unique nature, or maybe it's not a unique instrument, but like being kind of lonely in this shakuhachi world where you're mostly spending your time with the instrument alone, did you feel like that gave you more leeway or more room for some kind of personal habits to develop? I guess one example I can give you is like someone like Wes Montgomery, right? He developed his own technique because he didn't want to play music that was too loud at night, so he started using his thumb. Did you have a similar moment with your shakuhachi experiences?
In that aspect, I think every shakuhachi player will need to do that to get a sound because everyone's face is different, and shakuhachi is not, although it's already standardized more, but it's still like not that standardized compared to Western instrument because in nature it is a piece of bamboo and you drill some holes in it and you just blow, try to make some musical sounds. So in that sense, we don't practice scales when we first get the instrument because we can't. It's too hard for us. Um, I mean, we do practice scale in sense that we play the minor pentatonics, but um, say like you say like uh, if you learn piano for like a year or so, you should be able to play like couple major scales and couple minor scales. But for shakuhachi, even if you're like, I've seen people who've studying for like 20 years and still can't play. I've seen like professional shakuhachi masters who can't play major minor scales on shakuhachi. So it's not a skill required to play the instrument, I guess. But if you ever want to play any Western music on it, you will need to develop it yourself. Um, so yeah, I do think you know players, shakuhachi players need to develop their own habits, but also in counterpoint of that, you kind of shouldn't develop too weird kind of habits because that will prevent you to get a proper sound. So it really depends on what you're talking about. But a common question people get to ask playing shakuhachi is that because it is so. This is not related to your question, but I'm going to say it anyways. People will ask you like, "Oh, how does it feel to like?" Because it is shakuhachi, so has a deep relationship with meditation and Zen in like at least Western like you know narrative. It has a very deep relationship with that. So people will ask professional shakuhachi players that how does shakuhachi change your mental health? How does shakuhachi playing you know helps you meditate, stuff like that. Um, yeah, so I'm not I'm not completely against that, but I am indeed against that people using that as an excuse to play very badly. Um, at least I don't believe their like intention to play badly, because I think they still want to play better, but they don't have you know, they are not well adjusted to admit that they didn't spend enough, you know, effort into that. And they just started to saying that I blow shakuhachi just for like Zen practice, but not for music. I thought a lot of that kind of statement is slightly bothering to me. So
That's very interesting because I think it might be well, it's not the first time I'm hearing that a musical instrument has some kind of spiritual connotation, because I feel like that's a common theme in Indian classical music as well. It's like a very spiritual thing, and people have this deep connection to it. But they sound good. I guess that might be the difference. I know you recently started a duo, which is totally improv based, with Yuhan, and she plays the piano. I'm curious about how that started and what your plans are for this duo project.
yeah, so the duo Amogh was talking about is called Piaku Piaku because you know taking piano and shakuhachi Piaku Piaku. And then yeah, so right now it is we make so it is a free improv duo of shakuhachi and piano, and we have access to synthesizers, so we sometimes incorporate things in our performances. So right now we're still exploring all possibilities, and we are actively uploading SoundClouds, and we're planning to be more active on Instagram and social medias. And yeah, hopefully we can get more chances to play in venues and actually play in front of people. And yeah, I think it will be an interesting project to do, because I'm curious to see how people react to that kind of music, which are not commonly exposed to general like public. So yeah.
Well, I had a taste of Piaku Piaku at Yuhan's recital, and I was very impressed. And I think both of you have great ears and you listen to each other. So I'm looking forward to where it goes, and I'm certainly hoping to hear more from you guys on social media. I know you're heading off to Kansas City, which is not in the state of Kansas, but rather in the state of Missouri. Uh, what are your future plans? Why pursue a master's or a PhD? And what are you looking forward to?
So, I'm going to have my master degree in UMKC in Kansas City, and I'm still doing composition major, and I'm looking forward to get to learn the craft of music more with professors and have someone to proofread my work, and also to meet other peers and get to know more performers, get access to more venues, performers, and get my opportunities for me to compose new works, and even like compose works for myself and others to perform. Um, I'm I'm aware that UMKC have a composer guild, which I'm planning to investigate and try to see if I can contribute and participate in their, you know, uh, to contribute and participate in the club or the guild, and to see what I can offer them and what they can offer me musically and also, yeah, artistically. So why do I need to get a master and doctor degree? Because composition is such a privileged profession that you can't really make a living writing music unless you're writing band or choir music here. Um, Even that is hard. So getting a degree can help you in terms of knowing more people and be be ready to tap into the academia world that you will probably need to investigate as a composer, no matter what's your interest in composing. So yeah, I think my time there will be well invested doing master and probably doctor.
I hope I get the chance to visit you in Kansas City because it might be the only reason I visit Kansas City.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fun so far. It's oh whoa, it's midnight, which is way beyond my bedtime. But I am armed with a little bit of caffeine, thanks to the ginger coke you made me. And so now, perhaps we can end with a fun activity. And I think we decided that we would try to improvise some music. But since it's late, here are my constraints for this improv session. The maximum dynamic we can use is piano.
Okay.
And I didn't actually consider this before, but this microphone only captures sound when we're very close to it. So we might have to experiment with space and such. And let's see, I don't think there should be any constraints besides, whoever wants to hold the mic can hold the mic. That's not an issue. But let's just roll with it, yeah?
Yeah, ASMR.
Yeah. The only constraint is it has to be soft. So let's begin. Thank you for that. Where can people find you on the internet?
On Instagram, and I just started my YouTube account, which goes by my name, Haoyu Zhao. And my Instagram, I believe, is also Haoyu Zhao 229. Yeah. Yeah. So
Cool. Well, this was fun. Please check out Hayu's music. And now I'm just going to wait for like 30 seconds because, you know. Yeah, that was cool. I feel like I was maybe a little classical when I was trying to create repeated gestures or something. But
I wonder how that was done.
yeah, we can check it out. Just going to wait till like 50 or something.
I will not watch this in my lifetime.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll have to watch it once at least.